handle communication for with client side application. Actually, how do we deal with the client side application? So what are the libraries required? Yesterday I explained them. Today we will implement that. So we will create and configure and implement them. So let's create one new application, or we can use in any existing application also, consuming in any existing application, configuring here. So already, yeah. So we have, let's create one application separately so that we can manage that communication. Right. Right. So here I created a demo app. So a simple demo application. So I will add the routing module and the CSS. We are configuring everything. Okay, so we have an application ready, and these are the basic things we discussed yesterday, what we need for handling the interactions. So we will see them, how we can work and how do we deal with that. So first option, already we have a server side application here. I created a simple demo app, and server side our API is REST API.js. It is having all the API requests to handle communication with the database. So this is the complete configuration with the middleware settings and everything. Let's go into our demo application. In the demo application, so I need to interact with two important components here. Actually, we need to interact and work with our data sources. One is the products, another one is category. So we need to handle communication with these two options. So that means what we are doing is, so let's open the command prompt and check the database which we are handling communication with. Category later we will see. Initially, first we will implement the products CD program files, MongoDB, and CD server, CD 4.0, CD bin, and Mongo. And so use Angular 10DB and db.tbl categories dot find and pretty, and this is the details we have. category ID and category name. So let's go to our project. In the project app, we are creating two contracts. We are configuring the contracts. So we can maintain a separate folder or directly just create the contracts here, configure the contracts. So let's add a new folder here in the app. So this is for contracts. So we are creating contracts. So that is in the app, we are creating contracts, and in the contracts, so we have, so one is I category dot cs ts, right? So this is I category dot ts. So this is one contract. Okay, this represents the category. So it, because we need to define interface and I category. This should represent two details initially. So one is category ID. Category ID is number, and these are the rules, and category name. So we need to configure the category name. Category name. So that is string type. These contracts are used for defining what type of data you are dealing with. So that is I category. Okay. And another contract is I product dot ts. So this is another contract. So that is I product. So interface and I product, and we have, so name, it is a string type, and price. So this is a number type. So number type, and we have in stock photo, like details we are having. So db.tbl products dot find and dot pretty. So we have these options here. So name, price, in stock photo, and category ID. Name, price, in stock. Okay, that is in stock, and this is Boolean type. So we have a Boolean type value configured here, and we have another photo. So the photo is a string type, and a category ID. So that is number. So that is the number type. So these are the options in this cat. So explicitly you are defining the type. Actually, we don't need to define these types also, because you know that our TypeScript supports inference, type inference, which will determine the types. So contracts are ready. So in the contracts, we have these two contracts defined. Let's create services. So we created a services folder, and in the services, I will create one service. So the basic service is to get the details and manage the details. So I will create a new file. So that is API data.service.ts. How to create the services, how to configure the services, what are the basic rules about the services. These all things we already learned, so no need to explain. Now in the service, so we have to import. You can generate by using the command also, service from. I'm manually adding that. So Angular core. From Angular core, so we have to import injectable. So from Angular core, we are importing injectable. And to handle communication, so with the HTTP clients, means HTTP services, so we need to import. So import from, so Angular /common/HTTP. From HTTP, we have to import HTTP client client. So we need to import this HTTP client. Yesterday I told you about why we need this. What is the purpose of this? We discussed about that. All right. Now, few more options are required. So to handle asynchronous calls, to configure and handle asynchronous calls, we need an observable to execute the methods. We need an observable from RxJS. So from RxJS, we need observable. So we need to use this observable. From RxJS library, we have to import this observable. And if there are any problems occurred in handling the functions that is executed by this observable, so observer will execute the observable functions, then we need to throw the error and catch the error to identify the problems. So you can use throw error, which is present in RxJS. Throw error is for throwing the problems. If there is a problem in executing the functions present in observable, then it will throw a problem exception. Throw error will throw an error, and to catch error, so we need another one. So from RxJS, RxJS, we have operators. From RxJS operators, so we have catch error. This will catch the error. So we have the catch error. Throw error will throw the error. Catch error will catch the error and display those errors. If there is any problem in executing the functions defined in the observable. So that is what we need to define. And how we can configure. So export class, and this is API data service. API data service. So that is API data service. And to mark it as a service, we need to use a marker injectable. So injectable, and injectable, we need to mark it as injectable. And we know that, so in order to register this service, so provided in root. So we know why to write provided in root. Already we discussed about this. No need to explain them again. So we are registering the service and we are configuring that here. That means it is available for the root level application, the service. Now in this service, what is the purpose of this service is, this service have to communicate so with the client side API and get the information from the client side API. So I will use here properties I will declare here. One is products get URL. Products get URL is our API URL, http://127.0.0.1:8080. So that is the port number, and in that we have get products. Get products. This is the URL to access the products. And actually already in our server side application. So let's keep that server side application API file open. Okay. Yeah, this is the get URL, actually get products. And this is the port number we defined, 8080. So get products is going to access the products. Okay, that is the URL actually. Okay, that is the URL to get the products. Okay, initially we will keep this now. Now we need a method. So we will create a method. Service contains service methods. Get products is a service method. What this service method will do is, earlier when we learned about service individually, it is directly having some data. This time it should return the data. It should return the data coming from, this location. Now that means now the data, what type of data is coming from this location? Already we know that the data that is coming from this location is product type data. In the contracts, the product type data, and not one product type data. Actually, it is having a collection of products. That means it is an array of products. Array of the products is accessed here. That means, so this is going to return array of products. So what type of data this method have to fetch, get, and use? So the data it is fetching and the data it is returning. So that means now what type of data it should return. So we need to tell. So for that, we will use asynchronous methods. That means we will use an observable. Observable will identify what type of data. Observable is a generic type. What is a generic type? Already we know. We learned about generic classes, generic methods. It is a generic type. Generic type means you have to define. So what type of data is coming into it? What type of data is coming? I product type array. So this I product type array data is coming. In that case, obviously, it should return the type of data. That means already we discussed that observable is a collection of values, or which are called in an asynchronous way, or it is a collection of functions which are called in an asynchronous way. In this case, observable is having collection of values of type product. Then obviously it should return that product type. How it returns the product type? To return that product type, it needs a HTTP client object to communicate with the API, get the API and return the API. So then what we have to do is, so we have to create an object. That means we will configure here a constructor. So into the constructor, so we will pass. So into the constructor, we will pass a private and HTTP. This is of type HTTP client. You know why to write like this. Already we discussed that. Now, so this is HTTP object which can access the HTTP methods. Now, through that object, we can make a request to this URL and get the data from the URL and return the data. So now what we have to do is we have to use this .http .get. By using get method, you can get data from the URL. URL is products this dot products get URL. It will get the data from the products get URL. Okay, from this URL, it is going to return the data. Point is, so what type of data is defined as return type? Return type is this I product array. That means this get is expecting the data from this URL, the same type it has to return. So get also a generic type. It should return an I product of array type. So that means observable so indicates a collection of type of data. That means get products is a method which is going to return the list of all the products. So coming from this URL. So that means whenever in your application you call this get products, then it is going to access the list of all the products and use the list of all products that is coming from this particular URL. Make sure that this API is running. So we have to check whether that API is running or not. So server-side application, this API should be running on server. Sometimes you start the server without starting the API, you directly try to consume it, then it will not work. So it will show a message that API is not responding. Because API is on server side, the server should start that API, then our client application can consume, right? So here, so what is the intention of this method? So we created a method. This method is using a HTTP client object to get the data coming from API URL and return the data as a response whenever get products is defined. So this is enough. So that's currently this is enough. The service is defined now. Now, once the service is configured, the service is defined here. Now, the next step, what we need to do is we have to consume the service in any application and use it. That's it. That means let's go here. Let's generate a component here. We have services, we have contracts, and we have to register the services and contracts. So the contracts and services that you are using, they must be registered and configured and used. Actually, service is already registered by defining this provided in root, right? Let's create a component now. So open in the terminal and generate a component. So ng generate component, products list. So skip test. So we are creating a component called products list component, skip test. Okay. So the products list component is ready. That means the products list component is generated. Okay. Now in the products list component, let's go to the products list component. And in this component, we need to consume that service and we need to use that service. We have to consume and use that service. In this component, we have to consume the service. In a component, how to consume the service, the technique you know. So how to consume the service and use the service? We will create private data. And the data is of type API data service. So API data service. This API data service is in our application services, in services API data service. We are accessing that API data service and importing that here. Through this data reference, you can access the service method called get products, which is returning the list of all products. Now, this is the data defined. Now we are expecting the data. What kind of data you are expecting actually? So we are expecting, so let's create a property, public products. Products is an array. We are expecting an array. So currently this is empty. That means whatever data comes, we will store in this local reference and we will use in the UI. Now this products is currently empty. We need to fetch the data coming from the service and store the data in this products. Then on initialization, what should happen is this dot data. Through that we can access the service method get products. And very important, get products is a service method, but see it is present in it is configured as an observable. So from an observable, if I want to execute any observable, means it contains collection of some function methods or collection of some values. So if you want to execute the methods, if you want to execute the values technically, so we need an observer. Technically, we need an observer. And to execute the methods, yesterday we discussed one point. So we need one point here. So observer is a collection of callbacks. It is collection of callbacks. That means it tells how to listen. We don't need observer. We need a subscriber, because subscriber is responsible for executing the observable. I hope everyone understood, right? We don't need an observer. So we need a subscriber, because the values or the functions that are present in observable, they are executed by subscriber and they are monitored by observer. Understood? That means to execute, we don't need observer. To execute, we need subscriber. Am I right? I hope everyone understood that. To execute, we need subscriber. And to monitor the values that are coming, we need observer. Understood? Right. So that means we need a subscriber. Subscriber means, so that means through the subscriber, you can read the values. That means you can execute this method. To execute the method, we are using subscribe. To execute the method, we are using subscribe. So subscribe is a function. Subscribe is a function. Actually, subscribe is a function. So actually, how do we write subscribe function? Technically, subscription, that means subscribe function, how we configure the subscribe function. Syntactically, here I will give for your reference here. Actually, how do we define subscribe function actually? Configure the subscribe function. So subscribe is a function. This subscribe is a callback function. It is a function. It is expecting a parameter. That means data as a parameter. And it is expecting data as a parameter. That means what actually this is nothing but, so this is the data. You can simply say that this is the result. And what happens is, whatever you are subscribe, it is working on an observable. That means we have an observable. On the observable, we are executing this subscribe. Observable is a collection of functions, or it is a collection of values. We are executing it. And subscriber is like iterator. Already I told you that RxJS uses iterators. It is like iterator. What it will do is, it will iterate over every value and it will store that value inside this result. That means result contains the values present inside this observable, or it contains the functions that are present inside that observable. That means we have to use that result. That means we have to use that result. We have to use that result. That means we need to represent, we have to use that result. We have to return that result actually, right? That means that result must be defined. That means what we are doing here is we are defining, and we have to store that result in some reference. So reference, in some reference, we have to store that result. We need to configure some reference and store that result. So that is what actually subscribe would do. That means subscribe is a function. So this subscribe function is using an observer. Observer is, we need to pass an observer. Observer means any reference name you can give. Suppose I will say, so some product is an observer. Okay. What this product observer will do is, I will just write an option shortcut method, means we will use the fat arrows. That means lambda. What it has to do is, it has to return this dot products. This dot products is equal to product, So it is equal to product. That means it will define that product is equal to product. That means what does it means? It means that subscriber is going to execute the observable. That means it is going to execute this observable, which contains collection of values. It will collect every value. This is an observer. Observer is nothing but, it is reading every value, and it is storing that value into this collection. So you know that this is a lambda notation. Instead of writing like this, what you can do, you can write a function. Into the function we can pass a product, and what we can do, we can say return this dot products is equal to product. And very important, this is an observer. This is an observer means, do you need an iteration for this? You don't need an iteration, because it is a self-iterator. It will iterate over every item present inside the collection, and it will store inside the products. That is what we discussed yesterday, that observer is a collection of callbacks. Actually, it uses iterator. It uses an iterator mechanism. By using that iterator mechanism, it will read the values. It will read the values from that. It will read the values and store in this reference. We can write in a short way. So that is what I written actually. The short way is, so product implies, this is the parameter, you know that function parameter, and this dot products is equal to, so get the data coming from that product and reference. Get the data and we are fetching that records and we are storing the records in these products. That means finally the information is present inside these products. So we have an observable. So we have an observer, you have a subscriber. So this subscribe is executing the collection returned by this observable and reading every item by using an observer. So here product is an observer and it is storing the details into that products. That means this products contains collection of all products coming from API. Then you know how to present it. Then what I will do here, so I will just use in this. Let's use a little bit of CSS also here. So we will import and import from dot//. So node modules bootstrap dist CSS bootstrap.css. So okay, we import from there and let's go to so the products list component HTML and let's present the data here. That means I will put a div. So and I will just create a heading, the products list. Let's create a table and here we are accessing the data class as table, hover and table. What data you want to display, that depends on your requirement. Table and table hover and t-head, so tr and th. Here we want to display the product name, we want to display the product price, okay, and we want to display the product photo. So photo, so just these details. And you need to maintain those images and all if you want to show them, right? We need to maintain those images here. Initially, I want to display, so name, price, photo, and in stock. So that means stock. We need to display those details there. And initially, we have another option, T body and TR. We need to generate the row and we use ng for let item of collection. Collection is products. So from the products, we need to get those details and display those details. Initially, we are displaying partial details like we have name. So that means item dot name. And we have another price, that is item dot price. And suppose I have another is stock. So I defined item dot in stock. These are the properties defined there. And we are accessing and using those here, displaying those details here. So that's it. So let's run this and see. So we will run this in a new terminal, right? So ng serve project is equal to demo app. So we are running this demo app and we need to keep the startup, right? So we need to keep this products list in the startup. So let's go to the app component, rest of other options, you know, right? App module, and here let's keep this products list component. So in the startup, that is the products list component we defined in the startup. Okay, right, products list component in the startup, and in index.html, let's keep that products list, app products list. Okay, initially you will get one products list. Okay, initially you will get an error. So because it says that we will monitor those errors, right? So what the initial error, because actually it will say that, so technically it will say that your API is not responding. That means there is no response coming from the API that you are requesting from your client application usually. That means it is not responding. Whatever the request you are making from the API, it is not doing that, right? So that's fine. So here, let's run this. So let's open this http://localhost. And it says some cannot get or some result. Fine. Yeah. let's monitor that. So why it is showing the cannot get, you can understand that, that is reasonable. So why? Because, so let's go to the inspect. In the inspect, you can go into the console. So that means you can go into this console's flip device. Yeah. So in the console, you can verify. So here, one is, so this is not able to access that content. So it is not able to access the content. So technically, it is not responding. So why? Because our service not yet started. Our service, we are configuring this. So, and the service is not started. Let's start the service also. So let's start the service. So first run this application, make sure that service is started. So where the service is present, you have in the service app, let's go to the server side application and open this server side in a terminal. So let's open this in a terminal. So cd server side. Okay. In that we have to start the API. That means node REST API.js. So node REST API.js, this says that server is listening. That means your server side app is started, right? API is running. Okay. Now let's go here and see our application started. And here, make a request here. So some more. So this API is fine. Our is REST API, yeah? REST API only, right? We have kept everything into this REST API. That is our method, means API which contains all the options. So let's call back here once. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter with the file names, capitalization. Once we will check here. The provider's service need to be registered. Not. It is building the application, right? Once. Okay. So some data is there now. Okay. Now you can see here. So it is fine. That means our application is working fine. But here, see the option here. It says that, so you are using a HTTP client in API data service is using an HTTP client. So it is injecting. So null injector, that means no provider for HTTP client. That is okay. Why? Because HTTP client is present in a HTTP client module, which we have to import that. That means what we need to do is we need to go to app module. We have to import HTTP client module here. So we need a separate client module here. So let's run that HTTP client module and see here, means import. We have to import so a HTTP client module for that. So Angular slash common slash HTTP. From HTTP, we have to import a HTTP client module. We have to import HTTP client module, and we need to configure that module here. So HTTP client module need to be registered. You know that if you are using any particular service, you know that technically, you know that If you are dealing with any module, you need to first inject that module and define that module here. The module is working fine. So that means it is working fine. Now see one more option here. So the module is working fine. See one more option here. Second point is it says that access to XML HTTP request from the origin. So it has been blocked. It has been blocked. So that means access control allow origin. Access control allow origin. So I already told you, cross origin. It is blocked in this browser. This browser have an issue in accessing that. So we need to configure the settings for that. So already, so client side, we configured that, server side, we return those settings. But important, you know that client side, again, whether that requests are allowed or not, they are blocked or not, we need to check that. So I will show you. That means this browser is explicitly blocking the data coming from external sources. This browser is blocking. So our server side, we return that for allowing the CORS policies, we have defined that. Access control allow origin. That means we defined that in our server side app. So let's go to the server side app and you can see that in the server side application. So we defined the CORS settings here. In the CORS settings, we already configured that setting here and we defined that setting here. That means we said that, so allow access control and all origin, allow everything. That means we defined. So asterisk, that means we are allowing that here. So, but browser is blocking that. So browser is blocking that. That means browser can block the resources request. Even browser can block images. Browser can block JavaScript, right? Browser can block cookies. So that means it is blocking it. Then one point we will see now. Let's open a browser, Chrome, another browser here. I'm opening Chrome. In this browser, I'm requesting the same content here. That means I'm not changing any setting here. I'm just requesting. I'm configuring and requesting that here in another browser. So same, that means CORS indicates that the browser is explicitly blocking such cross-origin requests. So okay, let's open this browser. And in this browser, this is Chrome. And here I'm making that request for that file. And you can see here, data is coming. That means our concept is working fine. There is no problem in that. It is everything fine. So that means the point here, you need to verify all these things generally when you are working. That means our API is working, our service is working. And in the presentation, suppose if I keep this class as container fluid, okay, and we are just presenting the data and it is going to access and present the data and display here. And you can see that here in this browser, cross-origin issues are coming because this browser is explicitly blocking them. But this browser is not explicitly blocking, then it is allowing them. It depends on even the browser settings, configuration of CORS settings, whether to allow the external sources or not. You need to go to the settings of the browser and there you have to configure the CORS, whether you want to allow or not. So, or I told you one point that you can even install a plugin that will control those settings on and off just by using one button. So, but this is ready. That means it is working. Now we are accessing the data and we are displaying the data. So this is the data we are having in the database. So that means this is the data we are having in the database. And the record, Samsung, JBL, Nike Casuals, Shirt, Fossil, Samsung Mobile, all these details are displayed here. That means we are handling the communication from the server and accessing and displaying here. That means now the data that you are watching here is coming from a database. It is coming from a database. Now we can use this for accessing, for inserting, updating, everything we can manage from client side. So the process, what we have done here is the step-by-step process, what we have done here is to handle this example. So first point, one more time I'm explaining, observe in the note I will give you, you can practice that. So first option is you need to create a REST API. You need to configure a REST API. So already I told you that any browser, you can go to the settings. So you can go to the settings. That means if it is Chrome, you can go to the Chrome settings. If it is Edge, you can go to the Edge settings. You can go to the settings of that browser, and you search for the CORS. You search for the CORS settings. So it will display the CORS settings. If it is not showing the CORS settings, that means you need a plugin to enable the CORS. So that means I have a plugin. I already showed you. This is one plugin. How to download this plugin I given to you, right? Suppose through this plugin, I am disabling the CORS. That means I am disabling the request. And once I will refresh this and see here, that means we will refresh and see here. And you can see that I disabled that. Data is not coming. So you can see that. Then obviously that error may come here. The error is nothing but it is blocked. For every browser, you can download the plugin. Actually, we don't need to download these plugins and configure the plugins if server side you already configured them explicitly to test on and off, and you have to verify whether your browser is enabled with that or not. So then you can simply, so see, it says that it is blocked. Now I will open this and I will enable that CORS again, and you can see that data is coming now. It is working fine. So that means, so important is for every browser, it will provide the plugins for the CORS, and those must be configured and enabled there. That means you have to configure that. So because you are just in the development level, generally, if you know server-side technologies and server-side techniques, and you know the server-side configurations, so in spite of whatever the browser you are using, you can make the request in such a way that it can reach every browser. It can handle any browser, right? But so even you configure that. Sometimes what happens is, so explicitly you may a browser may block that. We can't force the client. You cannot force the client to use JavaScript. You can't force the client to use cookies, right? These are all client interests. That means you can't force even to view the images. Client can even block the images also. In that case, it depends on the browser. Server side, whatever is required, we written already. Then, so this will allow, it will handle. Suppose this is Chrome. Suppose I am accessing an Internet Explorer. In Internet Explorer browser, I am trying to access that. So on Internet Explorer, we will try to request this here. So localhost. Yeah, localhost and localhost, then 4200 and let's make a request here. This is localhost is not. This Internet Explorer has some problem, right? And you can see that here also on Internet Explorer. Let's open the debugger here. So we need to use the debugger. So function, yeah. And once you open the debugger and you check the debugger, so in the debugger, you will see the same problems here. That means in the consoles. So you need to identify that problem here. This is slightly outdated in my machine, right? It will show the problem, why it is unable to access your data and display. That means the cross origin problems here. So now this is overridden. I have the latest browser like Chromium and this Chrome. Then one important is you have to make sure that CORS is defined. So, however, your server-side technology will teach you how to write this. And I told you already, this is not same. That means these options are same. The method of writing this is not same everywhere. So that is importance of this course, right? Anyhow, now the data is coming here, data is displayed here. That means we are accessing the data from a database and displaying. Now, how we can submit the data, how we can interact with the data. That means how we can post the data. This is fetching the data. The process I will show you now. So what we have to do is, so a simple accessing data. So accessing data from API and presenting and consuming in Angular application, Okay. So what is the first step you have to follow? So what is the first step we need to follow actually? So first what you have to do is you have to create a new API on server. So create a new API on server. Create a new API on server. This already we know that what we will do here is we will create. So in our server side folder, we create REST API.js. In server side folder, we created REST API.js. And this REST API.js so will contain all the logic required for that. It contains all the logic required for that. So let's, I will paste this entire logic here. And this is the logic we return for that REST API. That is the first step. So you have to create. So we have to configure and create this REST API. Okay. Now, after this second step, next what we need to do here is next step, create a new Angular application. So already I created a new Angular application. So, and I defined this ng generate application, and the application is, so we have demo app. Okay. And after creating that Angular application, the basic rules about the application, no need to tell every time. Already we know that now we have to create. So contracts folder. So you have to create contracts folder in app folder. Okay. So, and add following files. Currently, we are using only one file. Later, we will use another file also. So, following files. We have to add two files. One is iProduct.ts. And in this iProduct.ts, so that is in the contracts, we separately maintain the contracts. So, we have to keep this. That means what type of data you are going to interact with, you need to set the rules for that. Another one, iCategory.ts. So in that, what data category type you are expecting. So this is mandatory. This is very important. You have to tell the observer, means observable, what kind of data is coming. Okay. Next, after adding this, now add services folder into app folder. So app folder. Okay, then in the services, add a new service file. And what is the service file we added? That is API data.service.ts. In this API data service.ts, so we need to, in the services, API data service.ts, we need to consume the data and present the data here. So that means we need to configure and consume and present the data here. So this is the service code. So what is the code you need to define in that service file? We need an injectable, we need a HTTP client, we need an observable, and throw error, catch error we will do when we are inserting the data. Currently, we are just fetching the data and configuring the data. So service is ready, okay? After the service is ready, we need to consume this service. So what we have to do is, so add a new component. Here we added a component called products list dot component dot ts. And so add a new component. So how to add a component we know already. In the products list component.ts, we need to add the logic. So component this ts have to consume that. Here, this is the logic for the ts. So what we done in the service? In the service, what we done? We created a method called get products. It is using an observable. Through that, it is making a get request to the API and fetching the data and returning the data. Whenever you access get products, it is returning. How to execute that? By using a subscriber, you have to execute the values and read the values by using an observer. Product is an observer, and you need to store that in the reference. And we need to just present this now. That means we need to configure products list dot component dot html. Right? We need to define that, and this is what we have to do. So client side consuming is same in any technology in the world. Only server side, your approach will be changing. That means now people ask, sir, how to do in Java, how to do in .NET, anywhere. So we don't care whether you have Java or .NET in the backend. Client side, you need just this URL that your Java is providing. I hope everyone understood that point. Angular doesn't care backend what you are using. Am I right? Angular doesn't cares backend what you are using. Is it Java or .NET or PHP? Right? It doesn't cares. It doesn't matter for us, Angular. And we don't need any configuration for that. Angular doesn't need any integration of Java or Node.js or .NET or MongoDB. Anything we don't need here. We just need a URL that fetches the data. I hope everyone is clear with this, right? Because again and again, everyone come with the same question, how to do in Java, how to do in .NET. Angular doesn't care about what you are using in the background. And Angular doesn't need any integration with that. Angular just needs your API URL. So that API URL is enough for Angular to handle your data from wherever it may be coming, whatever backend database may be using. I hope everyone is clear with that point, right? So that is the reason many people ask, will you show with Java? Will you show with .NET? Will you show PHP? What to show with that? You know those technologies, then you will not ask that question actually. Because that is API, and configuring API is in every technology is a different process, services. Only final point what they need is the URL that returns the data. The API URL that returns the data, that gets the data, that is only the thing you need. And now one more is we need to register this module. So that means one more option is, so we have to go to app.module.ts. And in this app.module.ts, we have to import this. So in the app.module.ts, we have to import this. That means we have to import the HTTP client module. So this is very much required for dealing with HTTP client here. We need to import this module. And once you configure this module, and declare this module also, so you need to declare that module you have to import, right? You imported this module into your application. So now it is ready. You can start working with this. And how will you compile that? That means, so test, how you will test this. So that means how you will compile, that means execution steps, how you will do that actually. First, make sure that your API started. That means what you have to do is, so you need to go to, so your server side app. That means you have to go to your projects, and in that you have to go to your server side location. And here you have to run your REST API.js. Make sure that your API started. Now you can start your your Angular application. So, and test it. And one more important point. So make sure that browser is allowing CORS. Browser is allowing CORS. So cross origin requests. So because explicitly browsers may block them, as I showed you a tool, even server side I written the settings, client side I can block them. So then they can't do anything. So data will not come simply, right? That is browser side. So we have to make sure that we have configured and defined and all this. So this is the point. That means now in this, what we are doing, we are accessing the data, fetching the data and interacting with the data. Now, one more thing we need to do is we need to create an interface from where we can submit the data. This is accessing the data. That means we need to create a form. We need to design a form. From the form, we need to collect the data and post the data into the URL. That means in the server side, it should insert that record. That means we need to create a form from where we can insert these details. Presenting these details, it's your wish, how you want to present it. We need to create a form that can insert the details into the database. If we can do that, that means we have a scenario of reading and writing. Then update, delete based on your server side API, you can manage that. If you know posting, then update, delete also same. Only the point is read and submit. These two things we need to be learning. Then server side, you create put method, delete method, and configure the request queries and all. And you can just use the API URL and submit the data here. So how to submit the data to API and insert records into this, that we will see in next session, right? Tomorrow we will see that. Today you try this, right? Then tomorrow I can show you how we can insert the record. Then we finish an end-to-end integration. Then I will show you how we can manage security and other things in Angular, right? Tomorrow we can continue with this, okay? So tomorrow we will continue by adding some more UI for inserting the records, okay?